Hey everybody, thank y'all so much for joining us tonight on Fusion Live. Such a blessing to have y'all tuning in with us. Tonight we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Nathan Pooley. Shouldn't really say Mr., he's not too much older than I am, but I actually first met him out at Upper Room, out at the beach. And now they actually have a church out there, Upper Room Church. And he's going to be bringing a nice little word to y'all tonight. Kind of go over some of the stuff to talk about before we get started. First, go ahead and hit that share button tonight on the video. Once again, we will be giving away some awesome gift cards tonight. I believe 3. We'll go ahead and say 4 Starbucks gift cards. So if you press the share button, your name is in a pot to hopefully win one of those. So that's fun. Also, throughout this whole sermon, feel free to post your prayer request in the comment section on the videos, and we will do a live prayer for that at the end of this. And other than that, oh yes, church this Sunday is actually reopening, so that is a very awesome thing. I believe we will be having 2 sermons, one at 8 o'clock, one at 10 o'clock, and so come on out and get all of your back worship back in at one time, all the Sundays that you've been missing. So with that being said, let's go ahead and give our tithes and offerings tonight. Obviously, we can't pass around the bucket yet. This Sunday, we still won't be passing around a bucket. You'll be putting something when you walk in the church, your tithes and offerings there. But if you have an app tonight, you can give that way. And I'll go ahead and say a very brief prayer over that, and then we'll pass the baton over to Nathan. So, dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much tonight. Thank you so much for everyone that's tuning in tonight, Lord. We just ask that you just bless them financially, spiritually, Lord, and that you just allow them to be able to bless the kingdom with what they have, Father. And we just ask that you give Nathan the words tonight to be able to speak to everyone on the other side of these screens, Lord, and to just give a word that needs to be heard, Father. And we ask all this in your holy, precious name. Amen.
Amen.
And it's all yours, Nathan.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm honored to be able to share tonight with everyone, and just praying about what to bring and what to share tonight. I feel like God gave me a message, but it's one I'm going to borrow from your pastor. And right here in this room, I don't know, it might have been 12 years ago, when Pastor Rogers first came to Pace from Destin, and he did a series on Wednesday nights called Nehemiah and the Wall Builders. And it was on a CD. If y'all don't know what that is, it's a cassette disc. It's like a little circle thing that goes into a slot in your truck. And but I had it on CD, and it was in my car. It's been in my car I still got a CD player, and I listened to it. It's really transformed my life. It's helped me in so many ways, and I know that Pastor is speaking on that tonight, and so I thought I would just share out of Nehemiah, and really just, I'm going to give you the nuggets. Like, I'm going to try to get just the best, the things that really have helped my life, helped me navigate, and what I'm noticing over the last 8 weeks is we've been in one of the craziest crises that this world has ever seen. Nothing like this has ever happened in the last, really up to 1,000 years. We've seen the whole world basically shut down. And what I'm finding about a crisis and learning about my own self is that a crisis is distracting. You know, it's like when you're driving down the road, I'm sure, and you've seen the car accident that's on the side of the road, and you don't know or see or think about anything else. You're just staring at the accident. It's a distraction. You know, it was crazy is there's accidents that happen because people are staring at accidents that happen. And when it comes to what's going on in our world right now it's a crisis. It's distracting. And any times that we're distracted, we lose traction. It's hard to really move forward. It really demands all of our time. It demands our focus. And I feel like right now we're coming out of that. And I'm finding for me in my own life, when I get into a place where I don't have traction, where I'm distracted or I'm off center, I'm not really doing what God has called me to do, I've gone back to Nehemiah. I've gone back to Pastor Nehemiah and the Wall Builders. It's one of those messages that marked me, that has stayed with me my whole life. And really, the one verse I want to share with you tonight, and we're just going to spend a little bit of time in the first 4 chapters of Nehemiah. But Proverbs 29, verse 18, and I know you know this verse. It's a super popular verse. When there's no vision, people perish. So when there's no vision, when I don't have a vision for my life, it's one translation says that people just stumble all over themselves. It's almost like walking around in circles. And I'm finding for me the opposite is true. That when we have a vision in our life, when we have a God vision, we prosper. When we know what God has placed us on the planet to do, we know what God has placed in our heart, we know the dream that God has put in us, when we have a vision, nothing can distract us from that. And when I look at the book of Nehemiah, and I look at how Nehemiah was able to navigate all the things that he did, he was led by such a strong vision that nothing could stop him. And really the one thought I want to bring to you is, what do you do when plans change? When plans change. And when we look at the life of Nehemiah, what I keep seeing over and over and over in this book is that nothing ever went according to plan for Nehemiah. He had this incredible vision from God. We all agree on that. He had this vision down inside of his heart, but his plan to see that vision happen, it constantly changed. And so when it comes to vision, I'm finding one thing that's true for everyone, is that when it comes to vision, it starts inside of your heart. It starts inside of your soul, that a vision is created twice. It happens when God places that inside of you, that it might have been a dream. It might have been a word of prophecy over your life. It could have been a mom or a dad that spoke something over you. There's a lot of ways that vision is birthed inside of us. But I'm finding it's created twice. The first time is when it drops into our heart, when it drops into our spirit or our mind. And then the second time is when we actually flesh it out. When we put it to paper, when we work through what God has placed inside of us. And Nehemiah, apart from Jesus, in my mind, is the greatest leader that's ever lived. He took a vision from God, and this wasn't a small vision. This guy rebuilt, I'm going to call it J-Town, the walls around J-Town, Jerusalem, in 52 days. This was 4.5 miles long, 166 foot thick. And he did it with a bunch of people that had no experience in construction. He had no previous experience in building anything. And so how did he do it? He did it with vision. He did it by planning. There's some nuggets in here that I want to try to bring out to you. And the first question I want to ask you is what is God's vision for your life? If I was to, right now, we were sharing a cup of coffee at this table, sitting down, and I was to ask you, what is God's vision for your life? I'm noticing a lot of people can't answer that. When I tried to think about my 21-year-old self sitting in this building, 3 years ago. No, I'm just kidding. 13 years ago. If you were to ask me that, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I didn't have a clue. I changed my majors 3 times. I wanted to be a meteorologist. Then I thought I was going to be a lawyer. Then I thought I was going to, I wanted to help psych patients. So I wanted to be, a psychologist. And I didn't know what my vision was or what God's vision was for my life. I was confused. But one thing that's helped me is say we're having coffee right now, and I'm not going to see you again for 5 years. So we're catching up, and I ask you that question. What's God's vision for your life? And you can't answer. Well, try this. Say that we meet right here again in 5 years. Where have you been? What have you done? How's your family? How's your spiritual life? How's your business? What do you want God to do in your life? If I didn't see you again for 5 years, what would be the best case scenario that you could sit down and tell me happened? I got married. Man, I've got kids. I got a family. My business is thriving. I've scaled it. I'm in ministry. I've started a church. What is God's vision for you? So until you answer that, it's really hard to put it on paper, and it's really hard for God to give you the building blocks until you can answer that question. And I want you to know that God doesn't want that question to be a mystery. He wants you to know the vision that he has for your life. And God's vision for your life, believe it or not, is going to be bigger than what you'd probably tell me. That God's vision for your life, if you were to tell me right now, I would say times it by 10. Because, and oftentimes, we just don't see potential in ourselves, but God sees potential in places that we don't. And so really quickly, in the first 4 chapters of Nehemiah, I'm going to give you 4 things that a vision provides, and then I'm going to give you 4 ways to develop a vision in your life. If you say, you know what, Nathan, I don't have a clue what God's vision for my life is. And so here we go. The first thing, when you have a vision, number 1, a vision provides passion. Chapter 1, verse 4 of Nehemiah. God dropped this vision in Nehemiah's heart. This is what happened. When I heard this, I sat down and I wept. I mourned for days. And what I'm finding when it comes to vision, there's no such thing as a passionless vision. What are you passionate about? What keeps you up at night? What are the desires that God has placed in your heart? Because oftentimes that God vision that's there will be connected to those things. So there's no such thing as an emotionless vision. What gets you excited? What gets you out of bed early in the morning? When you're doing this, when you know tomorrow I'm going to be doing this, you don't have to set an alarm. You can't sleep at night. God's vision for your life is going to be connected to those things that he's placed in your heart. Psalm 37, verse 4. When we delight ourselves in God, this is what he does. He gives us the desires of our heart. You know, for a long time, I thought, well, the vision God has for me, he wants me to go suffer in some third world country and, you know, sleep in a hut and have rats everywhere. And, you know, God's going to call me to do something that I hate. And I've found it to be the opposite. That God's vision for your life is going to reveal desire in you that maybe you didn't even know was there. God would never call you to do something you're not passionate about because he knows you're not going to do a good job at it, and you're not going to want to do it anyways. And so God places desire in you to connect it to his vision that he has for your life, because you didn't pick those things. What makes you happy, sad, what those things inside of your heart will always connect to the vision God has for you. So it's going to provide passion. The second thing that a vision provides, this is verse 5 of chapter 1. When Nehemiah had this vision dropped in his heart, he said, God of heaven, the great and awesome God, loyal to his covenant, faithful to those who love and obey his commands, look at me. Listen to me. Pay attention to this prayer. Your servant, I'm praying day and night in intercession. The second thing a vision provides for our life is motivation. When we start to discover and unveil the vision that God's placed in our life, nobody's going to have to motivate us. We're gonna bombard heaven, right? We're gonna be ready to charge hell with a squirt gun on a tricycle, right? Like listen to the words of Nehemiah. Day and night, I'm knocking on heaven's door. I'm trying to get God's attention. This vision that he's put in me, nobody's having to motivate Nehemiah. Nobody's having to tell Nehemiah to get out of bed and, hey, you should start putting together this plan to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. All of that just came naturally when he's seen that vision that God placed inside of his life. The third thing, this is all in the, again, we're going to stay in the first 4 chapters. Nehemiah 2, verse 4. When Nehemiah got this vision deep inside of his heart, the next thing that happened is the king basically asked him, what do you need? And if you look at what Nehemiah responded, he said, I'm praying under my breath. And he says, if it pleases the king, if you think well of me, let me leave my family so I can go and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. And so the third thing that vision provided for Nehemiah was direction. You ever been lost before? I was in Miami last year, and I thought that I could find my way to Miami Airport without directions. And so I tried to do it just based. I thought it's the Miami Airport. It's one of the largest airports in the United States. I'll be able to find it. I don't need any help. And so I missed the exit twice. I was picking up my mom. So my mom's sitting at the Miami Airport. She's calling me, blowing my. I said, Mom, I'm sorry. And so what happens when we get direction for our life is we know exactly where we need to be, when we need to be there, and we know exactly where we don't need to be. When this vision was dropped in Nehemiah's heart, he knew what I'm doing right now, I can't do anymore. He was the king's cupbearer. He knew it was time for him to make a move. He got direction in his life. And then the fourth thing I want you to see, this is probably the biggest one that vision provides for our life. Chapter 1, we get a little bit, we don't know how tall Nehemiah was. We don't know how much he weighed. We don't know what the color of his hair. We don't know much about Nehemiah besides his vocation. And when God placed this vision in his heart, the first thing Nehemiah did was he made an excuse. Say, God, I'm the king's cupbearer. You know what the king cup? That basically his job was to test the wine and the food before it got to the king. He was a professional drinker. I'm just going to say it. That's what he did. He made sure that nobody was going to poison the king. And now God has placed his vision in his life to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. And what began to happen when this vision was placed in Nehemiah's life is he finally found his purpose. He finally found, this is what God has put me on the planet to do. I remember about year 8 or 9 at Pepsi. I worked at Pepsi for about a decade. And I would come in my office, and I had a great job. I mean, I loved it. I made good money, great benefits, company car, phone. I mean, it was everything I would want in a career, and I could have stayed there. And God placed a vision in my heart for something else, plant a church. And I remember sitting in the office and just wondering, was all this wasted time? You know, I mean, I've been at this job for 8, 9 years. I've been working my back hurts just thinking about it right now. My back, you know, I've been slinging cases of Pepsi like a crazy man. Is any of this connected to the vision that God has for my life? And it 100% was. I'm going to just say this. You know, I love what I do, and I love pastoring. But I learned more working at Pepsi than I ever learned in seminary. I learned more from working that job because I know how to form a budget now. I know how to deal with irrational people. Come on, right? I know how to manage people. And so what happened with Nehemiah was immediately he thought, I'm the king's cupbearer. My job title right now has nothing to do with building anything. But God always uses your history to catapult you into your destiny. Vision connects the two. God doesn't waste anything. And so if you got a vision in your heart that's bigger than where you are right now, know that God doesn't waste that. If you're working a job right now that seems like it has nothing to do with the dream God has placed in your heart, no, God never wastes that. God has a way of connecting the dots in our life and using everything that we've been through, every experience, every the vision that he has for our life. And here's what I'm finding, because this is really the title of my message. It's never the way that we plan it. It's never the way that we plan it. If you'd have told me, you know, if you'd have rewind the clock and say, Nathan, you're going to plant a church on the beach, and this is what you're going to do with your life, and this is how it's going to happen, and I would have told you you're crazy. Because my path to the vision that I thought God had for my life was completely different than the actual plan that happened. And so let me give you a few things now that these principles, if you say, I don't know really what God's vision is for my life, or I'm confused about it, I think these things will help bring clarity. These things will help bring some details to the vision that God has placed in your life. And I want you to know this, a God vision, number one, will always affect other people. Like if, you know, I've sat down with folks and normally my first question if I meet you and I've never talked to you before is if you had all the money in the world, what would you do? If money was not an object, you got $10 million in the bank, and when you spend 5, it's reloaded. If just unlimited resources. You know, some people answer that question, I'm going to buy an island and I'm going to be sipping martinis for the rest of my life, chilling poolside. That's what I'm going to do, you know. And so I know that's not a God vision. That's not a God vision. A God vision will always impact other people. And so when you know that you're entering into God's vision for your life, you're going to know it because your life is going to begin to influence the people around you. You're going to begin to see impacts in ways you haven't seen. You're going to begin to see things begin to align in your life that normally didn't align. It's always going to impact other people. And Nehemiah, you know, I think Nehemiah, as he began to walk into this vision for his life, he's seen this. He's seen people called to the vision that God had placed in his life. He's seen things in his life he'd never seen before. But the biggest thing was this. It wasn't the wall. We think about Nehemiah that he built a wall. No, he built hope. He restored hope in the people, in God's people. He restored the dream and he restored the motivation and the encouragement. You know, the walls had been broken down for years and the people were discouraged. And Nehemiah didn't build a wall. On the surface, it looks like he built a wall, but Nehemiah built people. And when it comes to God's vision for your life, it's always going to involve people. It's always going to involve building people. It's always going to involve pouring into people's life. It's always going to have that at its core. If it's making more money, it's probably not a God vision. If it's scaling a business, probably not a God vision. If it's growing a church, probably not a God vision, if that's the motivation. But if it's people, if it's pouring into the lives of people, if it's adding value to people, if it's serving those around you, when that's your central mission, when that's your motive, then get ready, because God is going to begin to just open up doors that you've never seen. And so really quickly, I want to give you 4 more things that help me develop the vision that God has placed in my life. Because like I told you, I didn't know for a long time. Like I sat in church, y'all, and just didn't have a clue what I was supposed to be doing with my life. You know, and just a little bit, like to tell you, like my story, I felt called to preach when I was 18. I was a senior in high school. That's when I felt God told me that's what I was supposed to do. But it was 5 years before I preached my first sermon. I just sat on it. You know, I just, you know, and I gave up on it multiple times. And God would send people. God would send a word of prophecy. God would send, I can't tell you, I had a stranger walk up to me in the mall one time. I was 20 years old. Hey, I don't know you, but God said you need to get back to the vision, to the call he's placed on your life. Walked off. Second time, some random lady, didn't know who she was. She told me, hey, I don't know who you are, but God told me that I need to share this with you. Your ministry is going to be on the Holy Spirit, and you're going to pastor, and you need to get back to what you're supposed to be doing. And so God has a way of getting us back on alignment with our vision. But these are some things that will help you uncover it. The first one is this. A vision will always begin as a concern. A vision will always begin as a concern. If you look at Nehemiah's life in Nehemiah 1, Nehemiah didn't have this grand experience. It didn't happen like God woke him up in the middle of the night and an angel visited him. There was no writing on the wall. There was no, Gabriel shows up with a message, or Jesus appears, or God, a burning bush. Moses got a burning bush, right? This didn't happen with Nehemiah. The way that God began the vision with Nehemiah is it was a concern. He got word that his hometown was in shambles. He got word that his family, his people, right? His flesh and blood was in danger. The walls are broken down. And then he cried. He wept for days. He had a burden. And a lot of times, everybody has a burden, right? You've seen, things in your life that concern you. But he couldn't shake this one. He couldn't sleep this one off. He couldn't forget about this. It was haunting him. It was waking him up at night. People were walking up to him in the mall saying, hey, dude, right? Like he couldn't get away from it. And when it comes to a God vision in your life, it begins as a concern. And some of the greatest advice I've ever been given on uncovering this vision for our life was by a guy named John Maxwell. He's written more books on leadership than anybody that's ever lived. I've had the privilege of spending some time with him. He's one of the greatest leaders I've ever met in my life. And when his first semester in seminary, he was actually a pastor first. When he was 28, he had one of the largest churches in the United States in California when he was 28. Grew it from 100 people to thousands. And he said in seminary, one of the greatest things he learned, a professor the first day says, there's three questions I want you to answer. You got to answer these 3 questions. These 3 questions are going to help you find what God has called you to do, where God has called you to do it, and how God has called you to do it. The first question is this. I'll give you all 3 of them. What do you cry about? What do you sing about? And what do you dream about? And when I say, what do you cry about? Again, it starts as a concern. What breaks your heart? What injustice in the world, when you see it, it makes you angry? You just know you need to do something about it, right? It could be the homeless person on the side of the road. 1,000 people drive by that guy every day, but you got to stop and help him. It could be that injustice that's happening in another country, and you read about it, you see it on the news, and you think, I have got to do something about that. What do you cry about? What breaks your heart? Because that will help you find that vision that God has placed inside of your life. The second question, right? What do you sing about? What makes you happy? What brightens your day? What feeds your passion, right? What motivates you? What gets you out of bed early and keeps you up late at night? What do you sing about? God is going to connect that vision for your life to things you're passionate about. So what is it that brings joy to you? What is it that nourishes your soul? That's going to be the area where God begins to birth that vision inside of you. And the third thing, what do you dream about, right? If somebody handed you a blank canvas right now and some paintbrushes and said, go for it, what would your dream look like? Everybody's got a dream. I think every person's got a dream that they're placed on this planet to see happen, and only you can do it. And so I think God's gift to us is he places those dreams in our heart, that vision. Well, our gift back to him is executing it. Our gift back to him is discovering those things and being willing to go after it with everything we got, right? I'm not talking about, well, I'm gonna invest $10 on this dream God has for my life, but I gotta get back to this. No, I'm talking about what dream that God has placed in your life that you're willing to go all in for. That's the vision God's placed there inside of you. And so every visionary starts as a dreamer. I'm noticing that every visionary starts as a dreamer. Every visionary, Joseph, right? They called him a dreamer. They threw him in a pit. They tried to kill him, right? His family forsake him. He was a visionary. Every visionary, Nehemiah, same way, he had a dream, right? He had something down inside of his soul that he knew, I got to do something about this. A vision, really, if you define vision, it's a preferred future. It's instead of just letting life happen, instead of just letting life go automatically, it's saying, you know what, I'm going to be intentional about this. It's a preferred future. It's ending up somewhere on purpose. Everybody ends up somewhere in life, right? Everybody ends up somewhere. Having a vision helps you end up somewhere on purpose. And that's what God placed inside of Nehemiah. And so to develop that, the first thing is I want you to start with concern. Don't wait for a dream. Don't wait on somebody to come and, lay hands on you and pour more oil over you to fry, 1,000 chickens and say go and anoint you and appoint you. That probably will not happen. It didn't happen for me. It's going to start with a concern, a burden. What do you sing about? What do you dream about? What do you cry about? The second thing that we see with this vision to uncover it is a vision needs time to mature. There's no elevator to the vision that God has for your life. And we want it. We want to get there quick, right? I'm going to hit the button. I'm going to go from here to exactly where God has called me. There's no elevator. You got to take the stairs. You got to put in the work. You got to put in the time. One of the things they found with Mount Everest, one of the tallest mountains in the world, is the people that tried to climb the mountain. Hundreds of people died on that mountain. They died because they climbed it too quick. In order to get to where God has called you, you got to go through stages, the steps of a righteous man. Or there's no elevator when it comes to God's vision for your life. It takes time. It takes time. You got to let it incubate. You got to let it mature. Like I said, I got called to preach. I was 19. I didn't preach my first sermon until I was 24, and it was terrible. It was terrible. I had to pay people to listen to me. The only place that I could go where someone would sit down and listen to what I had to say was nursing homes, and I'm not joking. And even then, it was hard to get. There was this. I used to go to this nursing home in Milton every week, and I would give my sermon. Well, there was this lady, and she was in a wheelchair. And so I would get in front of the TV, and I would give my little message. Well, she would wheel her wheelchair behind me, and she'd sit there with her finger on the button to turn the TV on. That's how boring I was. She was ready for me to leave so she could get back to watching TV. And what I'm telling you is when God places a vision in your life, don't think it's going to happen overnight. This ain't a fairy tale. This takes work. This takes sacrifice. This takes pain. This takes being willing to stay committed and stay focused. It takes time to mature. And what happened with Nehemiah is exactly that. It didn't happen overnight for him. It took time. It took resources. One of the things that Nehemiah did was he had a plan. Before he ever approached the king, before he ever got on his chariot or whatever he took to Jerusalem, right? He had a plan. And what I want to challenge you to do is if you're in the incubation period right now where you say, Nathan, I know exactly what God's called me to do, but I'm frying hamburger. I'm making hamburgers at McDonald's right now, and this is not it, right? I'm stocking Pepsi at night, and this is not anywhere near the vision God has for my life. Well, what are you doing right now to prepare for the vision that God has for your life? Right? What are you doing right now? Like, how much time are you putting in thinking about, planning about, and praying about the vision that God has placed in your heart? John Wooden, he was a basketball coach. He said it like this: when the opportunity presents itself, when it comes, it's too late to prepare. And so for me, I knew God called me to preach. I didn't preach my first sermon for 5 years, but you know what I did do? I had a composite notebook, little black and white notebook, and I followed around Pastor Rogers like a crazy kid. And I tried to write down everything that man said and everything he did, and Pastor Lowry, and I was front row every Sunday like a kid in headlights, staring and just taking it all in, watching, taking notes, studying, trying to get, I never preached one sermon in my life. But I knew that the time would come eventually. And so for you, I'm thinking, whatever that vision is in your life that you know God's placed inside of you, this is a perfect time to start preparing. Like tomorrow, God's going to answer your prayer. Tomorrow, you're going to get that phone call, and that job's going to be on the table. Tomorrow, you're going to get that loan that you've been looking for your small business or whatever. Tomorrow, what are you doing now to prepare for your future? That's key. That's key. Because when it comes to downtime, you can't waste it. You got to be preparing. You got to be planning for when the timing is right. Opportunity. That word opportunity it's a Latin word. It means open port. And so back in that day, several hundred years ago, when that term was coined, the ships had to wait for their open port when the tide was high, so that they could get into the port. And if they waited and they missed their opportunity, they had to wait 24 hours for the tide to go back out and then come back in. And when it comes to pursuing God's vision for your life, I want you to see this. There's divine opportunities that he's going to open up for you that you need to wait right now and be preparing for, so that when the opportunity comes, you don't got to prepare and then step in. That when the job offer comes, you are ready to go. You're ready to move as soon as it. The king asked Nehemiah, "What do you need?" Check this out. He gave him a list. I need this much timber. I need some letters from the governor. I need this many people. I need this much time. Nehemiah had been preparing. He wasn't shooting from the hip. He had a plan, y'all. Come on. And so you got to get a plan when you're in that stage as that vision is maturing. The third thing, and I'm hurrying, I got 2 more points, is that a vision, when God begins to unveil it inside of you, a vision will require you to count the cost. Jesus said it like this: that no man builds a house, right, until he makes sure he has enough money to finish it. And when it comes to vision, the one thing that you've got to be willing to do is you got to be willing to give it up. Everything that you got and everything you know is normal up until this point. Because nobody's going to sacrifice more for the vision that God's placed in your heart than you're willing to do. And when it came to Nehemiah had to leave everything. Nehemiah worked for the king. Imagine that. Imagine being working for our president, and you were his right-hand man. You had a job in the White House. You got whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted. You were rubbing shoulders with other presidents and kings. Nehemiah left the security of the palace to go build a wall around a city that he didn't live in, hadn't been in years, and knew nothing about building. And so when it comes to vision, you gotta count the cost. What am I willing to give up? Because what I'm finding is a lot of people, have big dreams, they have big vision, and the problem is not where I want to go in life. The problem is, what am I willing to give up to get there? Everybody has, I know where I want to go, but I got stuff to do. I gotta get back to this. I don't know if I'm willing to leave my job over this. I don't know if I'm willing to leave my people group or the friends I'm hanging out with right now, or I don't think I'm willing to move. I'm not willing to do that. I know God's called me to do this, but I'm not gonna give up a peanut butter jelly and sandwich at 9:00 at night. You got to count the cost and make that decision in your heart. What are you willing to give up for what the vision God's placed in your life? Are you willing to walk away from everything you know is secure? Are you willing to walk away from your job? Are you willing to walk away from people? Are you willing to walk away from security? Nehemiah had to do all of those things. And so there comes a point in our life when we're pursuing the vision that God has placed in us is that I believe he tests us. And he wants to see, what are we willing to give up? What are we willing to do to walk into the, and do we want God's vision for our life more than we want comfort? Do I want God's vision for my life more than my normalcy? And that's why I think right now is the best time to pursue God's vision for your life, because normal has been exploded, right? The box that we know as our comfort zone and our normalcy is that box is gone. We're probably never going to go back to what normal was 9 weeks ago. And so if there was ever a time to make a jump, if there was ever a time to say, okay, I think I want to go back and I want to pursue what God has placed in my life. That's why I wanted to bring this message. And this is my last point, and this is really the whole, I feel like the main thing that God wanted me to share with you tonight, is that Nehemiah, as soon as he stepped out and took that risk and he left his job, you would think that's enough, right? I mean, he left his job, he left his security, he left all of that. As soon as he shows up in Jerusalem, Sanballat and Tobiah come out and start lying on him. They start threatening him. They start smearing his character. They just start throwing. They're doing everything they can to try to get Nehemiah to stop what he was doing. And what I want you to see and understand, and what I'm finding in my life, is that a lot of times when opposition is ramped up, it's not that God is telling us no, he's telling us go. It's the enemy's way to try to get us off track. It's the enemy's way to try to get us. And if you look at Sanballat and Tobiah, this was in chapter 4. This is where we're going to end. You know, Sanballat and Tobiah, they had one goal. They wanted Nehemiah to quit and go back home. Just go back to where you came from, right? Go back to the comfort of your old job. Go back and work for the king. Leave this alone, right? You're making a bad decision. They lied on this guy. I mean, they came in at night. They got an inside person, right? They was able to siphon off somebody on Nehemiah's team, trying to sneak in the back door. And this is what I want you to see. This is what I want you to see. Nehemiah never quit. He kept going through the ridicule, through the criticism. When people told him he couldn't do it, he wasn't good enough. At one point they threatened and said, "Hey, there is a enemy, just a tribe of warriors coming. There's a battle about to take place. They're coming to kill you, Nehemiah. They're going to kill everybody." I mean, these are serious threats. Nehemiah never abandoned the vision. What he did is he changed the plan. And that's what I want you to see, is that when God places a vision in your life, the thing about vision never changes. If God told you to do something, it's going to happen. But it's probably not going to happen the way that you planned. You're probably going to have people that you thought were going to help you. And here's the thing about Sanballat and Tobiah, they were Jews. Nehemiah was a Jewish person. He was rebuilding the walls around Jerusalem. He was being attacked by his own people. And he didn't quit. He changed the plan. I want you to see this in Nehemiah 4, verse 9. This is what he did. He said he prayed to God, and because of the attacks, Sanballat and Tobiah, he set up a guard. And so if I want you to see how Nehemiah navigated, he would pivot. He would build, and then when he would be, when this kind of opposition would happen, he would switch over and give people swords. Hey, we're guarding, we're fighting. And then at one point, the people on the wall, they had a hammer in one hand, and they had a sword in the other. I don't know if I'm fighting today or I'm building today. I don't know what today's going to be like. But I just want you to know, on the way to your vision, you need to hold on to your plans loosely and don't let go of the vision. Vision is refined, but plans, they always change. They always change. And so right now, that's how I want to pray. I want to pray for some people that have some vision in their life that maybe hasn't happened yet. Or maybe you've had some plans change in your life over the last several weeks. Maybe you've lost a job, a friend. So much has changed. And I'm finding a lot of times God will take our plans and he will flip them upside down because he wants us to return back to the vision. That's how he did it with Nehemiah. It came through, constantly. Nehemiah had to pivot. He had to change plans. He had to change course. But he didn't get off the wall. He didn't stop pursuing what God had told him to do. And I just want to share it from my experience. If I would have quit when plans would change, I would not be doing what I'm doing today. And now I'm at a point in my life where when I make plans, it's almost funny because I know they're not going to happen. when we sit down and strategize as a team, even as a church, a man makes a way in his heart, but the Lord directs his steps. And so when God places a vision in your life, you're married to the vision, you're dating the plans. You can walk away from them at any time. They're going to change, they're going to come and go. And so don't be upset. Don't think that because your plans have been completely turned upside down that God's through with the vision. He's not. He's just refining it. He's ready to. He's just bringing in the details. He's just wanting to see how committed you are. Are you really, really committed to this vision? He's wanting to bring those things just right out. He wants to sharpen your focus. Bring you back to what's important in your life. And so I want to pray for those. If there's anyone that needs, direction tonight or prayer for that, and I really, that's kind of what I feel like God placed on my heart. There's some people that are watching this, and maybe your whole life's changed the last 8 weeks. The job you thought you were going to have is not there. The person you thought who was going to be there is not there. You went to get your hair cut last week, and your barber wasn't there. You know what I'm saying? Like your plans have changed. But I think that God is doing something great. He's getting ready to set you up to get back to that vision. And so we're praying for, let's see, you want to lead us in prayer?
Absolutely, I sure will. That was a great word.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. As we pray tonight, dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for this word tonight that Nathan brought us, Lord. It's just great words to know that things will change throughout our paths, Lord, but like you said, we will stay on that certain vision that you have for us, Lord. And tonight we just pray for Keith, Lord, and we just pray to give him confidence, Father, and spiritual strength, and just let him be safe in his home, Lord. And we just pray, and we know that you know every situation that's going through him and through his life, Lord, and we just thank you for your presence there, Father. And for Tiffany, we just pray for peace in her life and bonding with the relationships in her household, Lord, that we know the enemy, that's where he'll try to hit us, is with our families, Lord, to try to tear us apart, Father, and we just ask for your peace there in that household, Lord. And for Chase, God, we just pray for peace and understanding in whatever it is that he's going through, Father, and we just know that that's one of your good qualities, Lord, is just peace raining down on us, Father, and we just ask you to just pray for everyone and put your hand on everyone behind those screens tonight as they accepted this word, Lord. And we just pray for just everyone out there, Lord, in your holy, precious name. Amen.
Amen.
And Nathan, I guess now it's time to give away some gift cards.
Awesome.
And I have a bucket down here, and I will let you draw 4 names out of there.
Okay, four.
Yes.
All right. Let's see here. First one is Nathan Pulley. No, I'm just kidding. Caitlin Levins.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Congrats, Caitlin.
Caitlin
Perfect.
Levins, all right.
That's one.
Let's see here. Kay Gainey.
There we go.
Come on down. You're the next contestant on Price is Right. Caitlin Scott. Lots of Caitlins here.
That's my wife.
There you go. Can we get all 3 Caitlins? Let's see. We got one more here. Joshua.
Oh, and I won.
You can't get 2, man. I'm pulling.
Okay, I'll give mine away. I'll give mine away.
Let me get one more here. Patrick Carter.
There we go.
There
Patrick.
it is.
Yeah. Yes. Awesome.
All right.
Well, congrats to all the winners tonight. The last thing I'll leave y'all with is, like we said, this Sunday the church will be reopening. For all the Fusion group out there, we are needing a couple more people to be able to stand out by the road with us and hold up signs and wave at everybody, welcome them in this Sunday morning. We've got a nice little group already, but a couple more people we would love to have y'all. So go ahead and shoot us a message, the Fusion Facebook page, a message, and we'd love to see y'all out here Sunday morning at 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. Thank y'all for tuning in, and once again, Nathan, thank you so much for your message, man. And y'all have a blessed rest of your week. Bye, guys.